Hey everybody, and welcome to episode number 1 of the Warren Weeks Show. I'm very excited to introduce my first guest ever. She's been in the media spotlight for decades. You know her as one of the original VJs on Much Music. She's a veteran of the Canadian music industry, and today she runs a really successful digital publishing and marketing company called Ehm & Co. Now, that alone would make her a fascinating guest, but there's so much more you don't know about Erica Ehm. We had a great conversation. She talked about the fact she's written 3 stage productions. She's won 2 Juno Awards. We talked about her famous interview with Kurt Cobain and the time that she drove U2 around in her mother's car. We got into that and so much more. I hope you enjoy this podcast. I want to thank you once again for listening. So let's get to it. This is my conversation with Erica Ehm. So thanks for making the time for this.
No problem. I will try and be interesting.
It shouldn't be hard. So I saw Instagram earlier today. There was a picture of you in a dune buggy. Was that today?
No, it was about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. I hope I wasn't busting in on your vacation, so that's good to hear.
No.
So thanks once again for making the time. I'm going to jump into some of the stuff you're doing today with your business, which I personally find fascinating, and I've been watching you over the years as you've kind of reinvented yourself a couple different times. But I'd like to start out, if we could, with some of the Much Music years. Is that okay?
Of course.
So one of the I was, in doing some research on you, I was really surprised to find out some things about you that I just didn't know. And some of those things were you've won 2 Junos, which is amazing. Like, do you find that not a lot of people know that?
No, I don't think a lot of people know much about me, actually.
So
why would they? Why would anybody really know anything except what they saw on Much Music?
Right. So I find that fascinating, and also the thing that I found even more interesting was the fact that they were for country music. If I have got that correct.
You 100% have it correct.
So
yeah.
Are you a country music fan?
Yeah, I am less so now because the genre has evolved in a direction that is less interesting to me. But when I was really into it was in the days when Lyle Lovett, Don Henley, sort of the singer-songwriter with eclectic tracks.
Right.
So it was redefining what country music was at the time. There was a new radio station called KISS, and they were instrumental in playing music that wasn't spot on old-fashioned country.
Right. So you've written country music, 2 Junos, 3 Canadian Country Music Awards, 3 SOCAN Awards. The other thing that I found interesting, 3 stage musicals. How did you fall into that?
Well, when I was working at, when I stopped working at Much Music, I became, just an independent contractor, and I did some shows with Discovery and Life Network, and when that was over, it just so happened that I met my husband at the time, my boyfriend, who became my husband, and I had my son Josh. And something happened right around that time where it could have been my age, it could have been a cultural view of women with children, motherhood, but I became persona non grata in the media world after I had my son. And I like to be busy, so I applied for a job at a small parenting magazine and became their editor. And in doing so, they suggested that I do a story on a company called Tanglewood Productions. So I was interviewing the producer of it, and he was telling me about all their different shows, and the one that they're going to be doing next was Caillou. My son was a year old at that time, or maybe 18 months,
right.
Maybe even 2 years. And I said to him, "Oh God, I love Caillou. I know, I understand it. I watch it all the time with my son." And he said, "Do you want to write the show?" And I went, Well, as a matter of fact, I do.
Wow.
And it worked out really well. So I ended up doing three of them. So two Caillou shows for soft cedars across North America, and then one for Big Comfy Couch.
That's amazing. So this seems to be a theme throughout your life and your career where,
What is it? Tell
well,
me what that theme is.
there's a couple. I think one of them is hard work, and I think the word you used in another interview to describe yourself was industrious, which I think is a great word. But you put yourself in these situations, and then you'll meet someone, or someone will ask a question, or something will be passing by, and you don't just wait for the world to come and choose you. You kind of put your hand up and whether it's sending a demo tape to Moses Znaimer or if it's asking that guy at a concert for a job, it's taking the initiative, which you don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you see a lot of today, or as much of today as you did back in the day.
So, Warren, you're kind of blowing my mind because, you know, you get me in the sense that I am an unabashed opportunist and I am also unabashedly ambitious. And for some reason, our society, those have negative connotations, especially when you're a woman.
Right.
But to me, they are the ultimate in positivity. They're someone who dares to ask for what they want, and I that is my secret sauce. Really, is every single one of my successes is based not on someone asking me to do something, but rather me putting up my hand, or definitely me doing the work, and usually, if I can, possibly exceeding expectations.
Right.
So, correct. I don't know if that is as common today, but for those who do it, they will rise quickly in whatever field it is that they are in.
So I also heard that you answered the phone at City TV for 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I was the entertainment coordinator. So in the office when I got the job at City, all I wanted to do was be a part of the music business. The reason why I started working at City was because I lived in Ottawa and I had heard about this TV show called The New Music, and I was in the music business since I was like 16 or 17. So that was like the mecca of the music business, because the music that they were playing on The New Music was leaps and bounds ahead of any radio station. It was very alternative. So that's where I wanted to be. So I got a job answering the phones for The New Music. And the same office was the entertainment for City Pulse Entertainment. So Jeannie Becker and JD Roberts were the reporters as well as the hosts for New Music. So I was sort of the coordinator. So I'd answer the phones, get all the mail, and book all of the shoots.
So, and I was going to say, I'm sure it wasn't your life's aspiration to answer telephones. So you knew that was a way to get in the door, a stepping stone, and to do that for 2 years, like that's the kind of persistence you don't see glamorized on Instagram. I think a lot of kids, I've got two daughters, and they think that you just decide you're going to be an influencer today and then you have 500,000 followers next week, and they don't see the grind, and the word hustle is overused, but that industriousness, right? And I think that if there was a way to bottle that and kind of sell it, I think that would be, you use the word secret sauce, and that's really what I see. So I do want to jump back to, I've got a couple questions about the Much Music days in particular, but I do want to, that whole theme of work, we're going to come back to that because I think it's really interesting the way you've deployed that throughout your career. So
funny, isn't that like how I worked hard and so I succeeded? It's funny how there's that weird correlation.
Right. So a couple stories that I heard, which really just, they're just like these things when I imagine when you tell your kids, they're just blown away. But I heard that one time, like, so U2 was in town and they're just kids and you're basically a kid, like you're all very young, and you ended up driving them around town in your car.
Yeah.
So tell me how that happened and kind of what that looks like.
So it actually started when I was in Montreal. I was a DJ in clubs, in punk clubs, new wave clubs, and the guy that I was dating's father ran the Club Montréal, the Club Montreal, and U2 was playing that night. And I was DJ, so I knew I loved them. They were my favorite band. So I was able to go there in the afternoon when they were doing the sound check, and I remember like barely being able to string two words together, but so thrilled to be talking to this guy, Bono, face to face. And after the show, he said to me, because I was able to see him after the show because I had access.
Sure.
He said, "You should come. We're playing tomorrow night in Ottawa." And so I did. I drove the next day, borrowed my mom's car, and drove from Montreal to Ottawa and went to see them. And stayed up really late and came back to Montreal and slept in and lost my job at Sam the Record Man because I slept in. So, but they did give me their manager's phone number and said, keep in touch with us. Because I guess it's always nice to be around a girl, a woman, who doesn't want to sleep with a band.
Right.
So I wasn't a groupie. I wasn't greasy. I just really wanted to talk music.
You like the music.
Be a part of the music business, and they were such nice guys. So then we found out that the band was playing in Toronto. So I phoned the manager and said, "Hi, remember me? It's Erica. You met me backstage in Ottawa and you invited me to go see any other show." And he said, "Come on down to Toronto." So my girlfriend and I took my mom's car. We drove to Toronto. And we arrived there, and it was at the Ryerson Theatre. And we go to the box office, and we asked for our passes, and there wasn't anything for us. So I went to the payphone around the corner and called the hotel because I knew where they told us where they were staying. So we called up. I said, "Hi, it's Erica. You met me at the show in Ottawa. There's supposed to be tickets." And so Adam, the bass player, answers the phone. He said, "Just tell them that you spoke to me and that to give you passes." I went, "Okay." And so we did. And so they did. They gave us passes. And then after the show, I went backstage. And honestly, I was just tongue-tied. I didn't even want to be there. I was so nervous. My girlfriend said, "We drove all the way from Montreal. We're going backstage." And we ended up, after their show, they said, "Hey, we want to go to a club. Does anyone have a car?" I went, "I do."
Oh, my God.
I had my mom's yellow Firebird, Formula Firebird. And so they went in I didn't know where I was going, obviously, because I wasn't from Toronto, but we ended up going to the Domino Club. And after the Domino Club, the manager says to us, "Where are you girls staying tonight?" And my girlfriend and I looked at each other and we were like, "I don't know." We didn't even realize how far Toronto was from Montreal. And so he put us up in the hotel.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Wow. But
they were such nice guys.
As you're hanging out with these guys, you talked about being uncomfortable or nervous or whatever, but do you have a sense of where these guys are going and that you're in the presence of this legendary band in the making?
Well, no one could have anticipated that they would have become that popular, but I do have a pretty good
sense.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons why I was in the music business is I would say that I was a music curator as a DJ. Mm-hmm. That's what you are. And on Much Music, that's what I was. So I think in life, that's been who I am, is someone who has a strong point of view and is comfortable sharing it.
Excellent. So I watched the interview that you did with Kurt Cobain, and it's funny because I've seen clips of that over the years all over the place. I never knew though until this week that that was your interview, but you've seen it everywhere because a couple comments that people made. Some people said it was one of the best interviews that's ever been done with him because you actually got him to open up, to talk. And I'd like to talk a little bit about, like in my day life, I teach people how to do media interviews, not this kind, but the Globe and Mail, the National Post, that kind of thing. And so I'm fascinated by the process of the interview. And this might be my imagination, but as I press play on that, and you're starting to ask your first question, and he has this kind of standoffish, sort of arm's length look on his face. But the first question, I think, I don't know if you remember it, but you asked him about books and what books he was reading. And it seemed to me something kind of clicked in his eyes, and he decided, okay, I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to open up. And it went on for 20 minutes, and you went down this rabbit hole of amazingness. Do you remember that day?
Of course I do. I remember when I walked, it was done in a hotel in Seattle, and I was there with my cameraman, Basil. I think it was Basil that I was with. Maybe it was Dave Hurlbut. I can't remember now. Maybe it was Dave Hurlbut. And I remember we didn't know if we were going to do the interview inside or on the balcony overlooking Seattle. And so when he walked in, I said, "Hi, I'm Erica. Do you want to do the interview in bed or on the balcony?" And he looked at me like I was crazy, which I just wanted him to like see me. Do you know what I mean? Like I just wanted to think that I was a person rather than someone who's going to interview him.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, we'll do it outside." I went, "Oh, sure, okay, let's do it." Now, what people don't know about that interview, which you understand, is when you do a two-camera shoot like that, what happens is the camera sits over my shoulder, and my job is to ask a variety of questions and, just as importantly, listen to what he's talking about for the full time.
Right.
And then when he leaves, the camera turns around and we do what's called re-asks. So I re-ask a question so that I look my best, and it pairs, you can also edit. So you have the question and answer together. Well, what happened, my understanding is that someone stole the tape of just him, the unedited tape. So if you hear me asking questions, they're being asked in a way that is very casual, and in many ways I would consider it to be unprofessional. But there was a tactic to it. I didn't want to sound like a broadcaster.
Right.
I wanted to be human and have a conversation with him with the intention of, after asking the questions in more of a broadcaster sense. Right. So, fortunately, my tactic of speaking to him like a human being was very effective in terms of getting an amazing interview. Unfortunately, I never really got the credit because the other side of the tape
wasn't shown.
Yeah. Was never shown.
Jeez. That's amazing. And it's weird now that you say that, because as you're watching it, there's a couple times during the interview where the camera kind of goes off of him and it's just kind of wandering in the water. And that is when the camera person would assume that we're going to be using the other shot.
Correct.
Interesting. Wow.
Well,
so about that interview, just quickly, because I don't know why it's fascinating to me. I just all these questions. So you ask about books, and then he tells you this book that he's read like 10 times. I think it's called Perfume. And then you ask a follow-up question, have you ever taken anything that you've written and put it in any of your songs? And he says, actually, yeah, I have. And he talks about the song that I think it's Scentless Apprentice. Did you know that in advance?
No.
Really?
I often don't like to know the answer to the questions that I ask, because then what's sense in asking the question? Wouldn't it be smarter to say, I know that you wrote this song using this thing. Why did you do it? Or what is it about that book? Or did you do it with any other books? Because I think when you, just like you're doing now, this is such a good interview because I feel like you've taken the time and you are prepared and you have genuine curiosity, as opposed to you just doing your job.
That's very nice of you to say. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it. To me, it's like, holy shit, this guy, like, you know what I mean? I feel like a valued subject, and I feel like hopefully this is what Kurt Cobain thought about me. She is genuinely interested. She is well-informed. She's taken the time to ask me things that not everybody asks me about. She's actually listening to what I'm saying. She's she has no facade. Like I didn't act like that broadcast, that listening face.
Right.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Tell me, with the one
right.
eyebrow up.
Exactly. I didn't do any of that because the most important thing for an interview, well, okay, I'm going to stop for a second. After I did that interview, like several years later, probably like 4 years later, I was working on a show called Real Life, and I was trained. They gave me a training with a guy named John Sawatsky, and he trains the CBC journalists on how to interview. And one of the things that he taught, which I think I inherently knew, was how important it is for the person who's doing the interviews to disappear. That to do a really good interview, it's not about me. It's about whoever, it's about getting the most out of your subject at any cost.
Right.
So you have to do, you as the interview, need to do what you need to do to get the other person to say awesome things. Usually, it requires us to shut up. That's the most important thing, is ask a question. You can do a preamble like you're doing, which shows you're researched, but then ask an open-ended question and shut up and listen and let them talk. And then go, and what else? Oh, or what happened? And let them continue telling their story. Don't jump in.
Right.
And that way, you'll have people will start telling you like stuff because they psychologically understand that you're listening. Most interviews don't listen.
It's funny. I've got in large letters right across the top of my page, listen. It's so it's interesting you'd say that.
You did that to yourself before.
I did that for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. Like when I was on Much Music in the live interviews, that's a very different kettle of fish, right? Why am I using things that my grandmother says? But that's a very different type of interview because in many cases, I'm expected, or the interviewer was expected to be equally entertaining. And sometimes people thought that I didn't know how to interview because my questions were so simple. But I had a strategy. There was a reason why I was doing it. I was asking questions that I thought the people watching the show wanted to know. So I wasn't asking questions to make me look smart. I was asking questions to get the best stories out of my guests. That's an approach. That's a strategy. That was what I thought was important in an interview. Not to make me look good, but to make the guest look interesting, or to make interesting TV.
If you look at the best interviewers, though, that's what they do. And there's only really, I think, there's less than a handful on the planet who have really kind of mastered that. So the other thing is, if I talk about themes, we've got hard work, being that sort of opportunism, being in the right place at the right time, and kind of choosing yourself to be put into that. But the other one is, and I'm not saying this really as a compliment, but just as an observation, that you seem to be in a bunch of different areas kind of ahead of your time. You could argue that in each part of your career, you've been a little bit ahead of the curve, or you've kind of seen where things were going and jumped in and sort of either made that part of your career or kind of monetized that in a way that then the world sort of catches up to you. And the latest one would obviously be your business. Is it called YMC today, or is it like Yummy Mummy still, or what's the actual name today?
So today it's known as YMC, but the actual company is M&Co.
Okay. So you became a sort of quote unquote influencer before it became cool, before it became a career decision for people, a vocation or a calling. And I found it interesting as well that this seems to run in your DNA, because your mother, and I was checking out her Twitter, like I think you guys have pretty close to the same sort of followings online. And I had no idea, I'd never heard of her before, but she's got this massive, this audience that she's created. It's about travel.
Yeah.
So how much of what you're doing was imprinted on you by her?
My mother is an idiot savant like me, I think. my mother, when she was in her mid 40s, her and my dad split up, and she was despondent. And so in order to help her heal, she threw on a backpack and started traveling by herself around the world with no agenda other than just to feel alive again. And while she was doing that, she started to write her experiences, and she started writing a little fanzine about travel, about female travel, women's solo travel. And she started to print them and sell them at local independent bookstores. And then at one point, she said that she was going to build a website. Now, you have to understand, my mom was at that time probably in her 50s.
Wow.
And no one had websites. This was like way ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. And so she built this little website, which became one of the largest websites for travel in the world. And that's her doing it out of her apartment. And my mom is 77 today, and she's still doing it. And my mother she still does it by herself. She travels all around the world, and she's known as, for sure, the oldest travel influencer, and many say the first travel influencer. So in terms of her inspiring me, well, my mom is the biggest inspiration in my life in so many ways, just because she just gets out and just does things, and she raised me to be fearless in that way. But to be honest, when I had a TV show called Yummy Mummy, and when the show ended its run, I was really bummed, because I was on a personal mission to meet more like-minded women. I was a new mom, and I didn't have a lot of friends with kids. And so my mom and my husband both said to me, why don't you just start a little website? And I did.
How many people do you have ballpark kind of working for you at this point in time?
I think there's like 17 people who work on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And then we have like other people that we call in depending on what the needs are.
Ramp things up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd like to touch on social media. Obviously, this is Twitter. You talked about Twitter changing your life, literally, that you had this platform, and you talked about the conversations and the ability to meet like-minded people and to build that network. And this is in the sort of earlier days, the heyday of Twitter. And I heard some comments recently where, I'm not sure the exact word, but I think you said something along the lines of Twitter, it's either doesn't have the value that it once had, or it's kind of broken to you. And then Facebook, you talked about them throttling down your audience's access, and not just yours, but throttling down everybody's access to content. So I'd like to get your take on the state of social media today, and how does someone in a business like yours, which is attention and eyeballs, how are you reconciling what's going on with social media right now?
So there's, like, you asked me about 30 questions in there, so I'm not really sure where to start. I can tell you that my personal feelings on social media is one of deep sadness initially, because it's true. When I jumped on Twitter, 9 years ago, there was this sort of euphoric, genuine sense of opportunity and friendship that was part of the vibe of the platform. It was a place where I literally met some of my closest friends. It's where I hired the majority of my staff, and it was a big part of my social life. Like, I would spend hours in the evenings chatting with people, and it was incredible. I think that when Trump emerged, prior to him being president, but just when he started to really become a potential leader, and he started with a very negative approach. And, I don't have to go into detail about his
Sure.
approach to social media, but I feel like it exacerbated this problem of trolls and the fact that people felt empowered to bully people online and to use hideous language and to share hate versus love, which was the initial idea of social media. Was I called it Pleasantville. It was my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that has had a huge effect because most of us are afraid to say anything with a point of view because
You
other
just get jumped on.
well, they'll just jump on you. And I mean, with absolute disgusting anger. So I think that Twitter really failed to protect their space, really. It was their party, and they let the bullies come to the party, and they never told them to shut up. And so most of the good people left the party.
Do you think it's too late for them?
I don't know how you're going to get all those trolls off. Like, you see, I think as a business owner, what I'm seeing, which is really heartbreaking, is that the bottom line, the dollars, are more important than the actual product, the experience. So one would think that the people in Twitter are grappling with, how do we get the most eyeballs? So if we were to shut down all the trolls, then our reach will shrink, which will affect how much they can charge for advertising. It makes their numbers look bad. So that's not a good business decision for any sort of media company, where unfortunately brands and advertisers look for reach. But what they do is they're not looking at sentiment. So they're advertisers. So the problem is that they are asking these platforms like Twitter to generate huge impressions for them without solving the problem that nobody actually wants to talk anymore. So it's like the people at Twitter and their board needs to make, I think, a huge choice in the direction and to have backbone and to say, this is now not allowed. And no, it isn't freedom of speech because it's our space. We own it. You're at our party. I don't think that they've had the courage to do that.
Right. Now, with Facebook, different problem. So not so much the hate and the trolls, and I'm not sure Donald Trump is too active on Facebook,
Right.
but the reach, you see it every year going down and down and down, and Facebook's revenues are going up and up and up. They've killed classified ads. They're killing traditional newspapers, and so when this is one of the everybody's eyeballs are there. So is that a struggle from a business? Like, how are you working around that in terms of getting content to the people that you want to get it to?
Well, I can't give away my company secrets.
Sure.
but I have surrounded myself over the years with some people who are significantly smarter than me, which shows how smart I am, which is to surround yourself with people who are very knowledgeable. And so we've anticipated this challenge and experienced this challenge with Facebook. So we've invested in, when I say invested, I don't necessarily mean financially, I mean directionally. We've invested in other strategies to use Facebook. So I am not as conversant about it, but I can say that dark social is where we see the immediate future in social media being. And I can't tell you how to do it, and I can't tell you anything more about it because I don't do it on a day-to-day basis. That's not my expertise, but it is certainly how we're working with brands right now and getting really fantastic engagement. And it's also about educating clients about what's important. So it's not the number of impressions, although reach is certainly of great importance, but it's the type of impressions, the type of engagement that shows that the ability that this is resonating with end users. So that's an important thing. But I think that a lot of people who work in the social space understand that, but it's tough to impress that upon brands who are used to what's the word? They're used to connecting impressions with success.
Right.
But we need to redefine what success is in the world of advertising in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. Well, even if you've seen the charts of people watching videos online, just how rapidly they drop off after 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So eyeballs and impressions those people are not actually seeing your content.
Right.
Who is there anyone that you wish you would have had the opportunity to interview at any point in your career but didn't, either because of opportunity or someone else got to do it or they passed away? Is there someone that you had kind of on that list that you didn't get to interview?
Well, I think probably I would like to have interviewed Madonna because I can't quite figure her out. She's a feminist, and yet she has succumbed to the pressures of aging, and I would like to talk to her about that. I would like to talk to her about why she just hasn't allowed herself to age gracefully, because that's making a statement. And she's all about making statements. So I would love to talk to her, and I would love to talk to Oprah, because she's got it going on. She is a woman who runs a media company with integrity, and I have nothing but respect for someone like that. She also knows how to listen.
That is true. That's one of her gifts throughout her career. I'd like to ask you the same question that at one point you asked Kurt Cobain in your interview with him, and what excites you now?
Oh, you're asking good questions. What excites me now? I think that right now in my life is very, very exciting because 2 years ago, I asked Terry Foster to help me run my business. And over the last 2 years, he's helped me completely change the structure and the workings and the future of M&Co. And in doing so, he's basically giving me like a crash course in how to run a business. I had historically run my business through gut and did incredibly well without having a formal education in business. And at that point, I took the company as far as I could with the knowledge that I had. So now it's very exciting for me to watch my business evolve into a real bona fide agency, and with me having to do less work. So I've gotten my life back, and my business is evolving and is becoming even more successful and more professional. And that to me is extremely exciting.
Is it just about delegating, or is it more kind of foundational than that?
It's initially I thought it was about delegating, but what Terry Foster has showed me is that it's more foundational. So we had to really restructure and rebuild the agency from the ground up. And that has been really exhilarating. I love the world of entrepreneurship and business, and I've never had this kind of an education to see how to do it right.
How did you meet Terry? Where did you guys get connected?
Well, what do you think? I reached out.
Of course, a
I
theme.
saw there he was the president of Cision Canada, and he was doing some branded content for Cision. So he was doing a series where he interviewed, in quotation marks, influencers. And this is before the word influencer has become what it is today. And so I tweeted at him and said, hey, if you're looking for influential people, I own the mom space. So he said, let's meet. So he ended up doing 2 of his interviews with me, and then did 2 white papers based on the business that I built, and was really intrigued with this unique concept that I had basically invented. And he was offering to help me build a board for M&Co, etc. But I was like, I can't start a board because I wouldn't even know what to ask them, nor would I know how to implement the changes that they recommend because I don't have that kind of a business background. So we stayed in touch. Then 2 years later, he emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, a friend of mine needs some help on a website. Could you have a meeting? So I said, sure. And by the way, would you at all be interested in helping me grow my business and maybe coming and running it for me? And he was just going through things in his life where he was reassessing what he was doing, and we sat down for a 3-hour conversation, and at one point he looked at me, his eyes sort of went out of focus, and he looked at me and he said, so basically you can do anything. And what he was saying was not me, Erica, can do anything, but what he was saying is that my agency, M&Co, has the permission from our audience to do anything. So the potential of advertising and content creation, etc., for the mom market was really limitless. And he went, you know what? You've got something here. I said, yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
And he left his job and he came to run my company.
That's a great story.
Hmm. He's a great guy. He's a fantastic guy.
Is it the same name as your husband too, right? Terry?
I know.
Is that a problem?
Well, sometimes I have sent texts meant for my husband to Terry, and man. I sent him little Rory. So I actually had to change my husband's name in my contacts to T.
Just so it looks different?
Yeah.
Smart.
Mm-hmm. But the weird thing is that they're both entrepreneurs. They're both in the music business. My husband has League of Rock, and Terry Foster, he has a side business where he is one of the preeminent collectors of everything Fender related. So he has Fender guitars and Fender amps, and he just collects everything. And a lot of his friends are big shots in the music business in Canada. That's who he hangs out with. His friends are music business friends who I know.
Sure.
And he wrote a book on guitars and Fender. So our lives really connect in so many different ways.
It's so interesting, but unless you had reached out originally, none of this would have happened.
Exactly.
Great lesson. So in today's young people who have this, they're being sold by guys like Gary Vaynerchuk that everyone can start a business and you can crush it. there's a lot of work that has to go behind that. So I think they're setting up a lot of people for disappointment. What would be your advice to someone who thinks that might be the calling for them, or that they'd like to start a business? What do you think would be some of the ingredients, based on your experience, that they would need to succeed at that?
Slow and steady. Build a strong foundation. That's what we always told our kids. We had literally building blocks that the kids would play with, and we would always say, so what's the number one thing that you have to do? And they would say, build a strong foundation. Seriously, we actually did that. And still to this day, that's one of the ongoing sort of catchphrases that we tell them. So everything that you do takes a long time to become a master of. And it's that 10,000 hours. Be prepared to put it in. Can I tell you? I'll tell you a little story.
Of course.
And then you can. When I worked at Much Music, one of the jobs that we had to do was promote the channel by traveling around the country and speaking and hosting events and that kind of thing. So I was asked to speak at Canadore College. So that was probably in 1988. I probably had been on the air for 3 years. And so I was talking about my job and what it's like to work at Much Music. And one of the girls in the audience put her hand up, and she said, so how'd you get your job? So the way that she was sitting, the way she asked the question, she was really not very nice. So I said to her, well, I slept with my boss. And there was like this, just like you, this like moment of what? Yeah. And then everybody started laughing and clapping and stuff, because that's what she was kind of looking at me like I would have done that. And I said to her, actually, when I was 16, I started working at Shom FM at the radio station. And then when I was 17, right before I turned 18, I started DJing in clubs. I worked at record stores. I managed bands. I got my degree in communications. And I just started listing off all the different things, many of those things that you don't even know about. I'm talking to you, or like there's many things that I've done that you don't even know about. Mm-hmm. And I made my list. I said I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. And I said, and that's how I got my job. And then she puts her hand up again, and I said, yes. She goes, well, isn't there a shortcut? And I said to her, well, that's exactly what you don't want. You don't want a shortcut. You want to do the hard work. You want to work your way up so that you actually feel like you've earned what you have, and that you understand how you took it from 0 to 100, because you built it piece by piece. And that way, when I stand here in front of an audience and they say, how did you get your job? I can answer it with confidence. And I think that is true for anyone starting a business, is that expect for it to take a long time, slow and steady, build it properly, build it so that it can withstand all the storm is going to blow at you. Obviously, you're going to have to weather so many storms. If you haven't built a strong foundation, it won't make it.
Erica Ehm, thank you very much. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I really, really appreciate it. And all the best to you and your family and your business for the rest of 2018. And hopefully we chat again someday.
That was such a good interview. And I really appreciate all the time that you put into studying or taking the time to research me. That was really impressive.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. If I'm going to be using your time, I want to make the most of it as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's great.
Thank you very much.
So that's it. Episode 1 is in the books. I want to send a big thanks to Erica Ehm for speaking with me, and an equally big thank you to you for listening. If you liked it, please subscribe. We'll see you next time.